This is what you'll need to decoupage a light switch plate. Today I'll be making this one. It's one of my most popular light switch covers. You will need Mod Podge or another form of white glue. I believe Elmer's glue will work just fine. I prefer to use the matte finish. There's also glossy. I like to use a brayer to flatten out the paper once I've glued it. You can use your fingers, perhaps a popsicle stick, paint brushes, or sponge brushes, which I prefer because they're disposable, an X-Acto knife to trim off extra paper. Of course, you'll need a switch plate. You can use ones that already exist in your house. Just take them off and use those, or you could buy a brand new one. And of course, you'll need paper. You can use specialty paper, wrapping paper, newspaper, photo. Decoupaging is very easy to do. It's a lot of fun, and it's something that you can do with your kids. The glue that I use is water-based, so there's nothing toxic here. It's a lot of fun, and you can let them, do whatever they want. Add whatever images, to their lights. The first thing that I do is I cut out the paper just a bit larger than the actual light switch plate. You will see here that it's just enough to basically wrap around the light switch plate. Next, I line the pattern up. If there is a specific pattern on the front of the light switch plate, I line it up, and you can actually put it up against a light bulb and see where the pattern should fall. I do this and flip it over, and then very carefully mark the location of the toggle. Once that is complete, I take my X-Acto knife and I score an X in the rectangle, like such. Next, I take a decent amount of the glue, the white glue, the Mod Podge in this case, and I slather it onto the paper. You don't want to put too much on it, but at the same time you want it to be enough that what I like to do generally is slide the switch plate onto the paper like that. That actually helps with bubbles as well. Flip it over, and this is where you can use your fingers. Smooth out any wrinkles. This sometimes can be the most frustrating, but with a little patience, it's not difficult to do it at all. So next, I flatten out these little triangles. You may actually need to put a little bit more glue on them as well, but I flatten them out, make sure that they stick. I go back to the other side, and again, work with those bubbles and try to flatten them out. Then I take my X-Acto knife and I cut away the corners, or trim however I need to. For instance, this side here is more than I need, so I'm going to trim it down a bit. Next, you take some more glue and you apply it to the sides. I like to do one side at a time. I usually start with a long side. And what I have found is helpful to, lay it down, press it against the flat surface, run my finger along the side, kind of work with it for a few minutes, to let some of the air bubbles get out. Do all four sides. Again, pressing down. I used to use old soup cans, like a Campbell soup can label, to make switch plates for my kitchen. I actually made what started all of this years ago was that I took a Morton salt label with the little girl and the umbrella, and it says, I think, when it rains it pours, and I cut it out and I put it on my switch plate, or on a switch plate in my kitchen, and my friends just loved it. So anyway, that was the beginning of my switch plate obsession. You know, it's just taking something completely utilitarian and making it interesting. You know, light switch plates are things that we touch every day, and I've had a lot of clients tell me that that it makes them smile when they you know, go to flip on a light every day and they've got something there that they really like, whether it's funny or cute or motivational. They really like it. So anyway, this is what you have then after you've applied glue to all the sides. So next, I let this sit for a while, and preferably, you know, I do a batch of these and then I let it sit overnight to really dry. But you can usually let it dry for at least 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and come back to it and then put your first layer of top coat over it. All right, now that my switch plate has dried, I take an X-Acto knife and I cut a little X into the holes where the screws will eventually go. And I take the Mod Podge and do a relatively thin to medium coat of Mod Podge to set the ink. I also prefer to stipple because I like that texture, but you can try other techniques. You might want to go through and pick out little pieces of fuzz or whatever might land on your switch plate. You can't help that, but you can kind of clean it up before it actually dries and sets. You can try other techniques than stippling to coat your switch plate. Oftentimes brush marks will look like painting, so that's a fun technique. I also then take the tip of my paintbrush and I push it through the holes to set the paper into the holes. Again, you can clean up the little pieces of lint on the switch plate before it gets sticky and dries. And then I let the switch plate dry again for anywhere from a half hour to 45 minutes. The longer the better. I'm working on a switch plate for a customer of mine, and I wanted to show you that you can do other configurations. This is for a triple rocker, the kind that you push back and forth. But you can pretty much decoupage any switch plate. I've actually even decoupaged very, very old. I wouldn't say antique because although they were old, they weren't something special, but very old switch plates that were very, very oddly configured. So I joke around all the time and say that you can pretty much decoupage anything, including your kids, and it's true. So if you have a funky switch plate in your house and you want to jazz it up, you know, this is a great technique. Okay, I'm back for a second coat now, and we're going to do exactly what we did for the first, which is put glue all over the light switch plate, and then stipple it or do whatever you want to it in terms of finishing it. Again, be careful about any lint or spots that may have fallen on it. Sometimes your brush actually will leave some spots, so you have to be careful. And put it aside and let it dry again. And we'll be back for a third and final coat. That's it. You have your switch plates ready to install. Makes great gifts. Adds some conversation to your room.